This is Fraud to Fearless,
where we inspire dreamers to overcome imposter syndrome, embrace their authentic selves, and learn how to harness your brand to build a path to success.
I'm Brooke.
And I'm Hayden, and we're your hosts.
Welcome to the show. Buckle up. We have a special guest on today. You guys are going to love him. This is the start of what we'll probably call an entrepreneurship series, but today we want to introduce you to our great friend, Kamden LaHargoue. Camden is a serial entrepreneur with over a decade of various ventures. Some of his recent fields of investing in business is in, this is crazy, e-commerce, product wholesale buying and selling, direct-to-consumer marketing, crypto trading, real estate, car rentals. This isn't just car rentals. It's like luxury car rentals, foreign car rentals, business-to-business product placement, podcasting, business consulting, public speaking, design and worldwide product manufacturing. The list goes on. Okay. Cam graduated with a degree in business with honors from Utah Valley University and also has an extensive background in competitive sports. He recently represented Utah in one of their high-level travel softball teams. So cool. Camden is 33 years young. He's a husband to Kristen and a daddy of two little boys named Ziggy, who's 3, and Sunny, who's 2. In Cam's free time, he enjoys cruising, traveling with his family to unique locations all over the world, playing golf, pickleball, softball, and anything competitive. Cam is ambidextrous and enjoys teaching himself new skills daily. He loves to drink kava with his boys, read, cuddle with his babies, listen to music, and relax on the beach. He's relaxed, playful, and sarcastic. He loves very deeply and is an extrovert. His cup is filled by conversing with others. Lastly, his mission is to one day help people all over the world through service and making a lasting legacy that will grow into his future generations. I can attest that you're already doing that, Cam. What an introduction. Welcome to the show.
So you guys, 7th grade, you guys have known each other. So it's really exciting to get folks that we've been doing life with together on the pod. So that's really exciting. But Cam, your podcast, I listened to several episodes to get to know you better because you and I are just meeting, which is exciting. But this is what you said on your pod. And I was really excited when I heard this because it's literally the perfect intro into our topic. But you said, fear has held me back for many, many, many years from actually jumping in and starting my own business. So take us to the beginning. I mean, your bio is super impressive, 16, 17 businesses. You've really gained momentum, it sounds like, over the past couple years. But take us back to the beginning on transitioning from you were driving for FedEx, right? And now it's, I can do this myself. Take us back to the beginning.
Yeah, I think the beginning started kind of college time. And in college, I just started thinking to myself, dude, this just doesn't feel right to me to work for somebody else. But the fear always outweighed the courage to jump in and just try it out, right? And the imposter syndrome, really. And I guess I just kind of put my head down and kept doing the school thing through FedEx, started working for somebody else. And when somebody else put me on as their operations guy, I started realizing, dude, this actually it's fun, but I think I could be the guy on top, kind of like with the bigger vision, saying like, hey, I need you here and I need you here and let's do this together, right? But could never do it. I could just never pull the trigger because I was so nervous that I would fail. And I didn't have any mentors or anyone to look up to see if that was normal. But I think a lot of that was just the not knowing. And that's why I started the podcast, because I really wanted my own podcast as well, tailored toward people hearing on-site life experience so they could go, oh, okay, that was my fear and it's actually not that big. And he went through it too.
Yeah.
So
What was it when it didn't feel right? Talk a little bit more about that. When you were working for someone else and it didn't feel right and you felt, I could do this. What was it that didn't feel right for you?
It felt exactly like when you're dating somebody and you know that person's not the right one. That's the exact same feeling. Where you're sitting there like, that's just not the right one, but everything kind of makes sense right now, but it's also scary to break up, so I'll just keep doing it. Same exact feeling doing the W-2 9-to-5 job. But I'm like, but this just doesn't really pan into my goals and my vision. And like you read, Brooke, my goals to serve and help everyone all over the whole planet. I'm not going to do that working at FedEx. So I don't know. And eventually it does get to that point though, that the universe is like, hey, this is now starting to not be a tug, but this is like a shove. And if you don't listen to the shove, then the universe will just smack you. And then you're like, all right, now I got to do it. And that's unfortunately where I got to. I got to the smack point where I lost my job. Kristen was pregnant. We had just bought a home. I mean, you name it, man. Everything came falling down. And it was like, hey, now you ready to do it? And you have no other choice. I'm like, okay, now's the time. So we had 3-month-old baby, brand new mortgage on a brand new home we built, lost my job from the industry, just not really working out. And yeah, it was like, hey, now you're going to do it? Yep, I'll do it. And then I started my marketing company with no experience except for selling a similar product.
This is so inspiring. So many of us, we have these ideas of, we like the comfort of the 9-to-5. We like the stability that it brings. We also have these dreams or aspirations. There's something I think innately human about creating or developing something. And so you're talking about in the beginning, you said fear was holding me back. I'm curious, do you remember the thoughts that were going through your head? Like, would the ideas come up and then would you just stifle them? Or what was the conversation going on in your head for other people that might be experiencing the same thing?
Yeah, totally. Great question. The exact thoughts I would have would be, oh, I got to go to work today. I do like delivering at FedEx, but man, it doesn't make very much money. And the time, it's not flexible. And then the second thought would be like, man, you can start your own business and make more money and be free. And then the third thought is, yeah, but you don't know finance or whatever QuickBooks is, and you have no idea how to pay people. And I don't even know the first place to start to do a website. All right, whatever. Okay, I got to clock in by 6:40. Let me brush my teeth really quick and head out the door. Like, that's literally the thought process. And it would happen every freaking day. And eventually it gets to the point, like I told you, it's not a slap or a shove. It's a, all right, you got to start this business. And if you're not going to do it, you got a kid, you got a kid, you got a house, some mortgage, car payments, like your wife's not working. You need to do something. So that was the thought process.
It's so interesting to compare because, and we'll dive into this a little bit more. I think that I had similar experiences in my job, but in different ways. And to the point where we talked about this in a previous episode, I would listen to these motivational podcasts, entrepreneurship podcasts, things like that. And I got to this point where I was like, I can't consume this content anymore. I can't keep reading these books. I can't keep listening to this stuff if I'm going to stay doing what I'm doing.
Because you got to do it. Yeah.
So you have to be careful with who you surround yourself with.
Totally. You got to be careful. They might set you up for success. Yeah. And that's what I always look at too. The people up above me that I look up to, and there's always someone higher too. It doesn't matter. Like, even if you're the richest person in the world, that guy is still looking at someone else because of their example as a dad or something, right? But I always look up to them, and I'm always just like, man, who are they surrounding themselves with, and what kind of steps can I take to get up to their level? And what are they dealing with? Oh, they all read books? Cool. So recently I've been like, cool, I'm a book reader. So I've just forced myself to read. Now I like reading. But I'm always trying to just grow and get bigger and learn, I guess, now, because I've overcome that fear to an extent. I don't think the fear ever goes away. I think the fear comes back in different levels, because now my fear is, shoot, dude, I'm like, $100,000 payroll between all businesses. Dude, I didn't even make $100,000 for 5 years straight of working when I was in college. Now my monthly payroll across all companies is around that point, right? That's a fearful thing. But then I heard from, I think, who was it? It was Jocko. He's like an influencer online, but He says those big problems, you know how you handle it? You just say good. Like, that's a good thing. That's a good thing that you've got that problem, right? It'd be a bad thing if you didn't have a big payroll. So just try to tackle those big things.
In our last episode, Brooke highlighted like the key themes of a book, 10x is better than 2x. And we talked about this idea of freedom from and freedom to. And real quick to highlight the, both themes, freedom from is probably what most people naturally view life as. So having a job, I have freedom from going hungry. I have freedom from being homeless. But then freedom two is thinking about, if I start my own business, I have the freedom to change the world. If I start my own business, I have freedom to have positive impact on people's lives. If I have $100,000 monthly payroll, I have the freedom to employ 20, 30, 40 people, give them a career. Yeah, and so the freedom from is very closely related to this imposter syndrome, this fear of, can I really afford what happens if I'm sick for a couple weeks? What happens if business goes down? Talk a little bit about that and how you've struggled with this. Freedom from just always kind of creeps in, that fear, that imposter syndrome, but allowing yourself to be courageous and brave, to dream of what freedom to could mean for you and your businesses.
I think the freedom to, that's a great point. I love that. I think the freedom to really inspires and makes you more intrinsically motivated rather than extrinsically motivated by your ego or by having things to show off. It's so important to have that because it doesn't go anywhere if you don't have that, right?
I think that's, I love this idea. Brooke had this realization in a previous episode that fear is actually a gift. It's not a bad thing. This idea of imposter syndrome and fear, if you harness it the right way, is actually a gift. If we go back to your story, and everyone can relate with that idea of, working for FedEx, doing a couple of jobs, like I think you did an operations role, you did a sales role, you talked about the industry misalignment and then transitioned to starting your own company. Take us back to when you started your business and tell us more about those details and how you overcame that fear, fraud feeling throughout that journey.
Yeah, I think before answering the decisions and how I went about all that stuff, going back to what you were saying about fear, to me, through my research and books I've read, fear is actually the exact same emotion as faith, but it's how you choose to view it. And so with my experience and what I've looked at is you can have faith that things are going to be okay, or you can choose the opposite of the spectrum of fear, and that's going to throw you into the fearful state of emotion. But it's the exact same emotion, right? That's the inverse of each other. And so to me, both turn out good. It just depends, because it's always, to me, in my opinion, life always is supposed to put you on your greatest and highest path of where you're supposed to be. Whether you were fearful doing it or you were faithful doing it, you're going out of faith. And I will be honest, it's taking a lot to try and get to that point. You got to train yourself to be faithful and have faith going into things. Because when you lose your biggest client, but you have that huge payroll, fear immediately sets in. You got these families you got to feed on your payroll. How are you going to do it? First thought is, well, it's coming out of my pocket. I'm the owner, right? Or who am I going to let go? That's so scary. But I think if you just try, and I'm not perfect, my wife will tell you first and foremost that I'm not, but she's my example. She's freaking unreal at this. You take the breath and know that if you're present and you're not working out of fear, you're going to be guided. But your question was starting the company. How did I make the decisions? I will be the first to tell you I am one that has to learn from experience as a failure. I have done everything wrong the first time. Everything. And golly, from like lawsuits, from petty crap that I should have never even filed charges on someone for, that I learned the lesson on. I'm like, well, that's my fault, dang it. Thought I could get that retainer or whatever, right? Stupid things I laugh at now to, should I do this hosting service or should I not? Should I white label a service for somebody? Should I not? And then you fail and now you don't have an agreement attached to it and now they're pissed and they want their money back. Like, I promise you, I've seen it all the wrong way. So now it's easier for me when I see something to be more fearful, but also have more faith too. It's kind of crazy. It's like it expands. Like when you have kids, if if anyone listening has children, you understand what love is. Then you have kids, and then you understand what love is, right?
Yep.
It's like you've never really known love until you have a family. It's so cliche, but it's true. And you only know when you have one.
Yeah. I have to stop you because that is so profound what you just said. Here at the beginning, you tell us I'm doing 100K on my payroll regularly. And where did you start? You said, I had to learn from experience. I did everything wrong. I don't think at least in my brain, in order to make it to a certain level, to get to a certain point, it's like, there's no way that I could do everything wrong and still get there. Like, I think that I have to make 100 correct decisions to get there. But you're saying your path to success was doing everything wrong.
Well, it feels like it that way. And I think the misconception is when people start something, they think that there's one right way to do it. But let me tell you this, Brooke, how many ways can you make a website? Is there one right way?
No.
Okay. Hayden, how many ways is there to make a podcast? Right?
Probably unlimited.
So many ways to make a podcast, right? It's all opinion based. But I think we get in our own heads about how to set it up correctly because we're our own biggest critic on how to do the perfect podcast our way. But what's crazy is even if you fail, you're the only one that really sees the small failures because you're the biggest critic of yourself. But the problem is so many people have this imposter syndrome or they don't start because they're so worried about the stupid little things. And it's just like, just freaking go. Just start it. Just get in. And that's what I teach on my podcast. It's like, guys, I didn't know contracts. I didn't know how to hire somebody. I had no idea how to do sales correctly or marketing. Just do it. You're going to learn it, right? Like Jeff Bezos didn't know how to do logistics and shipping the way he does now worldwide, but now he does because you hire people. Now he does because he learned, right?
Yeah. So Cam, my wife and I, like 3 years ago, we bought our first house and we needed to paint the whole house because there was this awful yellow color that they even painted all the ceilings. So we painted the entire house, us two. And we know where, like, if I look in the corners. Did you stay together? We stayed together. We did have a rule that any time before we started painting, we needed to take a tequila shot. So no sober housework. That was a rule that we did implement. But when I look at the corners, even in this room, I can tell you where it was getting late at night. But no one notices.
No one notices. I wouldn't. I was just going to say that.
But we do. And I think one thing, the podcasting thing is interesting, and I imagine it's the same when you start your own business. I love this idea of fixed mindset versus growth mindset. And I think part of the fear and fraud that holds people back from just doing it. If you start a podcast, regardless of, to your point, the infinity amount of ways that you can do it, whether you don't pick the right name or you don't pick the right software, you'll figure it out. You'll make changes as you go. But I think a big part of the fear is fixed mindset. I'm not good enough and I'll never be good enough. This will never get better. And just giving yourself permission to have that growth mindset of, I might not know how to use QuickBooks, but in 2 months, I'll be a lot more proficient than I am now.
Well, that's the difference, I think, between a good entrepreneur and an average or one that fails, where they always give those statistics of like 90% of businesses fail within X amount of years, right? I think it's because people get lazy or they get complacent. Because if you're always trying, you're going to be that 10% that succeeds. You nailed it on the head. I think as long as you're trying and you're working on processes, our bodies are built and made to learn and adapt.
I love that we've kind of talked about the beginning stages. There's something so exciting about starting something. And there's that initial fear. When you can change your mindset, you can get over these thoughts that we're having daily of, no, you don't know this, you don't know that, and worrying about all the little details. You get into it, right? You overcome that first initial fear. Mm-hmm. Now what I'm curious about is when you're in it, you're in the middle of it, and I've hit this point in my business. It's like a honeymoon stage, right? You're like, this is amazing, this is fun, I love all the things that I'm doing. And then you have these moments where you're like, I literally want to quit everything. I'm curious if you felt this way, because I literally was telling Hayden the other day, I'm looking at the list of everything that I've got to do, and I love it. It's purposeful, it's meaningful. Like you said, it's intrinsic. I'm intrinsically motivated. But I'm like, man, I literally want to quit everything.
Yeah, but you're nailing it. You're nailing it right on the head like any employee, though. We all have experiences at W-2, right? You guys have been employed. What days do you wake up and you're like, man, I just really don't want to go to work. I hate this, and I never want to freaking go back and see my boss again. True?
Probably
False?
happens to everybody, regardless of what they're doing. Yeah.
Okay, so why do people have this weird misconception in their head that they think being a business owner is any different? Some days are super high, and other days you're like, I hate this place, and I'm selling it all. And yes, I've had that. And I think the best thing you can do is have a really good support system. For me, it's being alone and going on a walk, or like drive, or listening to music. My wife helps a ton at being my therapist. When I'm like, I hate it, I want to sell it all, she'll be like, all right, stop. Okay, how about we go get In-N-Out? Let's just get the kids dinner. Like, tries to change the subject because she knows it's temporary, and it's just the client pissed me off, and the drama and the SOPs are a little off, right? I think it doesn't matter if you're a business owner or an employee. Everyone has it.
So we've talked about your journey transitioning to being an entrepreneur. Talk to us about the transition of, I'm doing this, I want to do this now too. I want to do this now too. Let's start a podcast. Talk to us about that evolution.
I think the evolution started with school ended, started the agency. I enjoyed doing sales so much and getting involved into it that I started getting money. And I was like, well, I have money now to like maybe invest in other things. I'm going to try crypto. And so I put some money into there. I see it grow. Okay, now I have double money. Maybe I kind of want to dabble in my own product companies instead of helping others. And so I meet friends, and then they come to me and they're like, hey, let's get this together. Here's the investment. Let's go. And then I think it just compounds, as you're going. And then as I'm growing that company, I get a call from a professor at UVU. Hey, will you speak to my class about entrepreneurship? No, I don't know anything about entrepreneurship. Yeah, you do. You do. You know it. Like you've got this business and this. I'm like, yeah, but dude, I am negative on the payroll every single month. Sure, I guess I'll freaking talk, but like, why do they want to hear of me? I suck. Like my stuff, it may look good, but I close like 1 lead a month and I lose 2, right? But essentially, I'm paraphrasing, Hayden, your question, but that's how it happens. And then it's just people meet others, and here you go. And all of a sudden, you're like, dude, holy freak, I have a lot of stuff behind me. I've had to actually cut some stuff out because I was way too busy.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So Brooke talked about she's struggling with that earlier in this episode about, this is my plate. Everyone, regardless of what you do, regardless of how much money you make, everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. Everyone has the same 7 days a week. So we've talked a lot in the past, Cam, about brand. And then our last episode was, how do you define success in alignment with that brand? And it sounds like you've done a very similar exercise where it's like, this is what I want out of my 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And sure, like a buddy calls me, let's go do this opportunity, but then that might mean cutting that out. How have you made those decisions on, this is what I want to keep doing? Because there's a financial aspect, but then there's also like, even if you're making money from this, is this really worth my time? Is this really what I want to, stay up at night thinking about, even if it's paying me money? And sometimes the answer is no.
I've shifted my thinking to more like, can I maintain time? Because time is important. And so what I try to do is go into partnerships now with, how much time do I personally have to spend to still scale this while still yielding a really good return? And then the second question is, how do you do that? I have a hard time, Brooke, with industries like yourself where you can't copy and paste yourself. So for instance, yours, public speaking, landscape companies or construction companies, it's tough because how do you copy and paste that person? That's so hard. So to answer your question, I personally am like, if it's ever something like that, I don't want to get into it right now because I don't have the time to sit and figure out how to find a solution. I think to me, Brooke, the way that you get more revenue is by selling products. And that's how you gain more money, because then you could be one person speaking to lots of people to sell lots of things as upsells, but you can't be Brooke in 65 different locations at once. right?
Exactly.
It's so hard. So
foreshadowing things to come. And I kind of want to go two different ways with this. I wanted to backtrack on something that you said. We have the same 24 hours and there's stuff that we have to figure out and how to prioritize and looking at that from wherever you're working. But there's something about in that 24 hours, the different fears that we face, we feel this imposter syndrome. I've felt this in corporate America. I've felt this today. We felt this in the podcast, where you start to look around side to side and you're like, I'm doing it. But if people could really see behind the scenes, I don't know if they would still come to me. We still feel imposter syndrome, even though we're doing it. How do you break out of that? The thoughts that come in, it's still not good enough. It's still, or you're in your corporate America job and you're like, I literally got hired into this role. They saw that I was qualified and I still feel like a fraud. Like they're going to find me out, that I'm really not as good as I say that I am. When those thoughts come or there's comparison, are you consciously thinking, okay, I hear it, but like I'm going to keep going? What are strategies that you can give to other people that are feeling like this right now? They're comparing and they're like, man, I just don't want to even keep going because I'm literally a fraud.
it's so hard to answer it because I have imposter syndrome, so it's hard to answer that question. I think you have to have a bigger purpose. The thing that helps me go on is having a bigger purpose than the business itself. Because I think the business itself could come and go, and it does, right? And there's stepping stones sometimes to other companies that you start or other philanthropic ventures that you go into. But to me, if I look at my family, the most important thing to me, I could lose everything. And as long as I have them, I don't care. So I think to me, that's the motivation that I try to look at. If a fearful event happens, it's like, we're going to approach this the best we can, best I know how. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it's okay. It still worked, just in a different way that wasn't what I was expecting. And we're going to go down a different route, because if I had it my way, I would have married so-and-so from back in high school, and I would have been very unhappy. And it would have been such a terrible life, working a totally different industry, but it didn't work out. And now here I am with the freaking coolest two little boys on this planet. We travel all over the place for work. I closed a deal when I was in Panama on a computer on the cruise ship, right? That's so cool. I didn't even think of doing that stuff. And so I don't know. I think the fear totally blocks people from seeing their unrealized potential or blessings that are around the corner, because you think you know it all, which is so blasphemous. But
I think this is a great example, Cam, of even when we talked about earlier, just know your brand, know your values, define success, and have them linked and aligned together. Well, there's this great quote. There's this guy, I don't know, Brooke or Cam, if you know, but there's this guy called Bob Goff. He's written a whole bunch of books, big person in like the Christian community. But Cam, he says he was a lawyer for his career. And he says the beautiful thing about life and values and success is take away everything I am as a lawyer. Whatever's left, that's who you are. And so that is essentially what you just said, Cam. It's like, take away all these businesses, take away my podcast, take away my Panama deal, take away my $100,000 a month payroll. Whatever's left, that's who Cam is. And so it's really cool, this dynamic of, you know what, even if one of my businesses fails, or even if I feel imposter syndrome, I still get to come home, hang out with my cool boys, hang out with my wife. And I think that's really difficult, because we have a tendency to bank so much on one thing in our life, our career, how much money we make, how many followers do I have, how many likes do I get when I do a post, that it's like, take away that Instagram account, take away your performance review, whatever's left, that's who you are. And if you don't like what that is, fix it. And I think that's a really beautiful dynamic that you just highlighted.
Well, I think you're also hitting something I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a book called A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And it's a really good book that nails exactly what you're saying. It is all about the ego. And people, I think, live too much in the ego, like you were saying, about their job and their salary and their position and their title and their they're a dad and they have this car and they've traveled to this place. Who freaking cares at the end of the day?
Right.
Like, why does that matter? Guess what? You're not that cool, because guess what? I've met people that have way more than that. And there's
Right.
always someone else higher up that has more. So you're always going to be chasing that unrealistic dream unless you can catch on to it quicker and be like, it's not a big deal. This stuff doesn't matter. It's attach yourself to the important things, right? And that's why I think I go back to the intrinsic motivation. Like what motivates you internally? Family. You got to find it out personally for you. Hopefully it's not something egotistical, because if it is, you got to unwind and do something else, because now you're attaching yourself to another thing. You got to get to a point where if you lost that thing, you'd still be okay.
I think it's interesting. The thoughts that are coming to my mind are when we're in the middle of this imposter syndrome, because we have this North Star, like you guys are saying, we have a vision of what really matters to us and understanding who we are. Have we defined that? Like maybe we're stuck in the middle because we don't have a clear definition of this is who I am. When I take away all of the external things like you guys have mentioned, what is that? How do I define it? Or even if it was family, like if I took away family, if I took away my job, it's just literally me. How do I define myself? What characteristics do I have? What kind of person am I? So if I can look through this lens of, okay, I want to be somebody that has grit. I don't give up, or I want to show up authentically. I want to be genuine. So I'm going through these experiences where you get invited to speak to a business school, or you completely blow it on whatever pitch and you lose clients. And you think, you know what? This experience is literally helping me build this characteristic
To the next better level. Yeah, that was supposed to happen. That's okay. Yeah. And I think everyone is out. No, I know everyone's out to just get loved. Everyone wants love in the end. I think from my research, that has been the bottom line. And you can revert back to everything. The reason why you want success, Brooke, is because ultimately you can tie it back to love. You want to be loved. You want to be accepted. You want to be seen, right? But seen means loved, right? Because ultimately that's what it is. We want to be accepted. And so if you can get to a point where you're like, I don't need to be accepted by other people that are all needing to be accepted too, and we all just are, and I just am, I think that's like that ultimate like Zen spot that you get to. But it's hard. It's not easy. I'm not saying it is. But if you have that in your mind, that I could lose my house, I can lose my job, I can lose all my companies, all my money, all my Bitcoin, and it's still fine. It's all going to be good. I think that's the ultimate goal.
and that feels so good.
But it's being okay in that moment when it actually happens, right? Let's imagine Brooke here for a second. Everything crumbles. Let's just pretend you have a relationship issue in your life, right? And things crumble. Or let's say that you have to start a new company. You're on your own, right? Is everything okay though? In the end? Just an example. Everything's okay,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, you're blessed,
Yeah.
You're fine. Everything's good. You're going to be just fine because you're being watched over and you're being taken care of from a higher level.
Mhm.
Even though it didn't go the way you thought it should, but it's going the right way. It's going the perfect direction. So
Mhm.
I want to talk a little bit more about and transition to this idea of you, Cam, as a leader. So we've talked a lot about Cam as an individual, your journey and how you transitioned to becoming an entrepreneur, and then just one after the other, trying these different businesses. But as a leader, you talked about hiring a team globally. In your podcast, you reference like Bangladesh, Philippines. Talk a little bit about how knowing that you have this imposter syndrome, how has that influenced you as a leader and how you mentor folks that work for you?
I love this because this is one of my favorite parts about business. I love culture. It's like my favorite part about the business is the culture side. Before I answer that question, I think just a plug, I feel like it starts at home though. That's why I like that we started with personal first, because Hayden, you and Brooke both know as parents or father figures or spouse, you yourself is going to reflect that exact same way on your employees. And if you don't know that, I'm going to tell you from experience, it does. And so what I try to do is focus on me being a good person, and then me being a good spouse, and then me being a good dad, because I can directly see the reference to being a good leader inside the company, because I do the same things to my employees. So now if you're a short fuse kind of guy at home, well, guess what? When a problem happens, why would it all of a sudden change because you're a business owner? That doesn't change. That's who you are. And so I think it goes back to, like I said, you. So work on you first, and then you can go into the business. And I'm not perfect, but I do love the culture side. And I think the first thing I think of is next month, and about a month from now, I'm flying my whole family out to the Philippines, and we're going out to do a team building activity. To me, that's so cool. We're flying out to meet my team in person. I have never met any of these people in person, but I built the whole team remotely through trust and through doing what I say. Right? I'll pay you on this day. You do this work. Okay. I don't know you, but I just see you on a screen, but I do it. I follow through. Right? Now we're going to meet in person. And I just think going back to what you were saying and building that team it's important, I think, because they look up to you. You're their leader. You're their dad, so to speak. Right? So you need to build trust, and it needs to be that uniform respect. But
let's double click on the culture piece. I love this. Earlier, you mentioned that you didn't really have a ton of mentors. So it seems like a big part of your brand is I learn through failure. I'm just going to go and try this, and we'll see how it goes. And if I do it the wrong way, great. I know one way not to do it. Check. So one big takeaway I have so far of this discussion is you seem to be a very curious person. I think for our listeners, it's very difficult to go into an industry or an area where you are not an expert. I've never hired someone from Indeed. I've never hired someone from the Philippines. I've never been to Bangladesh, let alone hire someone there. So to give yourself permission to like literally opening up Google, what do you search? I don't know.
Totally.
Is this website like real? Talk about that, Cam, because that's probably the majority of people that choose not to do it. That's why. Part of it is they don't believe in themselves, but then it's also this piece of there's a whole other world. They probably know more about living on Mars than hiring someone in Bangladesh. How do you even start from square one? Like, talk
what do you
about
even
that
start?
transition.
Yeah. What's the keyword you even plug in? Like you said, yeah, totally. I think the way that I've gotten around that, you're dead on. And I feel the exact same way. And yes, I have those same exact thoughts. That's why me and Brooke are probably laughing, because she knows me that well. But I think for me, it's networking. Networking has changed my entire life. I didn't know anybody, let's say 5-7 years ago. No one. I was like one of those stupid imposter kids from college, name dropping people because I saw him at Ruth's Chris once, and I was like, oh yeah, he's so cool. Because I shook his hand. Like, come on, dude. I was doing the fake it till you make it crap. But now I can confidently get to literally anybody, I feel like, because of who I know in my network. It is who you know. It's not cliche. Don't laugh at that comment, and don't laugh at it's who you know. It really is a real thing, and you do need to be good at it. You need to be good at selling yourself, because by doing that, I'm able to now figure out how to hire in Bangladesh. If I don't know it, I got my homie over here at XYZ company, and I call him up. Hey, bro, I'm trying to hire this. Could you help me out? Yeah, I would look into this. Bro, I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm going to send you a gift card, or, hey, let me take you out to lunch. I appreciate your time. Now I just figured out the answer. How do you start with networking? Well, there's networking groups everywhere. You can go get started with that, or call me and I'll hook you up. Like someone passed me the ladder. Someone passed me the ladder, and I feel like now I'm taking that ladder and I'm passing it down to others.
That's awesome. What's your secret? How are you so good at this? Like, whether you're an intern, whether you're a early mid-career professional, whether you're an entrepreneur trying to break into a new industry, how do you network? Because networking is so dynamic. It can feel fake. It can feel forced. It can feel like a sales thing. It's very hard to come across genuine and be remembered by that person. What are your tips to how you network successfully?
I'm going to ask you, and Brooke, how do you guys network, and why do you feel like it's that way? Let's start with you, Hayden.
Yeah.
You just had that whole list of worries and fears and all these things, but sit there for a second and deep root like why you have those, and answer why you have such a hard time networking with people when you walk in that door. What is it?
I actually love networking.
He's amazing at networking. Can I brag about you for just a second, Hayden? So Hayden and I We went to grad school together. We were both in the MHR Masters of Human Resources program. We both did our MBAs with an emphasis in data analytics. Hayden is like master networker. He connects with people and is instantly friends with them. And so he has some kind of gift and is really, really good. But day to day, this is the question that we get asked by so many people. Oh, students that are in the program will come and approach us and say, what do you do? How do I connect with these businesses? How do I? So it's really, we're interested to see what a take that you'll have on this from an entrepreneur's perspective. But with that, Hayden, I'll pass it off to you.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. That's super kind, Brooke. Thank you. I actually hate the term networking. I like to call it relationship building, but having learned this, I mean, grad school at Utah State was so powerful in teaching me how to do it. But when I am talking to an early career professional, mid-career, or a student, an intern, I like to think about networking or relationship building like you're in the Olympics. Think about being a gymnast. There's multiple events, and there's few people that are the best at all events. Normally, you have your event that's your specialty, and that's networking, right? Because when companies go to campus and recruit, or you are in a work environment, there's multiple different ways you can network. It's one-on-one, it's in large groups, it's in a town hall, it's in a cocktail party. My event is in small groups, or preferably one-on-one, where I can get to know them, build a connection. I think taking notes is essential. So when I meet somebody at work, I have a OneNote page, and one of my categories is one-on-ones with everybody's name. I literally type the dates. So I have like weekly one-on-ones, monthly, and then I track notes of what they said. So if 3 months ago they said that their 8-year-old is playing in the championship soccer game, my next one-on-one, you better believe I'm going to ask if they won, but things like that, and being intentional and actually caring and thinking about it like a relationship instead of, hi, how are you today? Good, I'm good. Here's what I need from you. I actually try and care, and again,
well, and that's why it works.
Relationship.
And that's why it works for you, because I think that's the majority of people going into networking is, how can I gain from this? And I think the reason why you and I are, I hate even saying successful or doing it right, is because we both go into it with the intent to help others first, or listen. Because to me, if I'm going in to meet somebody, to answer your question about how I network, I'm going to get to know that person on a friend level. And if I don't have them on that friend level, you're not in my network. But in the beginning of my entrepreneurship journey, it was like, I got to know all the big name people so I can have those connections. Bro, newsflash, even if you do have them in your network, you're not on that level. They're not going to share anything with you, and they're not going to open their doors up. You got to have a better relationship with these people.
Yeah.
And that goes for all of it.
I think it would be awesome to do a deep dive, like another episode on this, Hayden, too.
Yeah.
But the first thing that comes to my mind, and we keep throwing out books in this podcast, so we should put this in the show notes, but building a story brand. And it goes back to our brand as a person, but the moment that you make it about yourself, game over. It's like, if I'm going into it with what can I get out for me, and that's the focus,
people can sniff it. Yeah, they're going to smell that.
Yeah. So really focusing on how can I add value? Why am I here? Like, what's the actual purpose? And it's not making it about me, but in building a story brand, it talks about how everybody's on this hero's journey and they're on their own path. And if I can go into my interactions and say, how can I help you on your journey? Now, that's easier to say than do, because it's like, okay, that's great, but I have a product that I need to get manufactured. How are they going to feel like I'm going in to help them on their journey? How can I show up authentically and genuinely in those conversations? How can I really get to know someone? So that's where you get into the nitty gritty of like, what does that actually look like?
And I think to add to that too, it's not just in networking, because if you're going into anything in life and you're trying to see how you can provide value or how you can help first, it's always going to come back tenfold. For example, on my sales calls, I don't try to persuade anybody to buy or do anything. I go into it like, and this is actually a question I ask every single person. Hi, good to meet you, Hayden. This is great. Thanks for your time. I appreciate it. So in a perfect world, here's the quote. In a perfect world, how do you see me or my company helping your brand out? And kind of tell me how I can guide you in the right direction, whether it's with us or it's a partner of mine that I can turn you to. You know how great that sentence is right there? It feels like the person going, oh, okay, cool. He's not going to sell me. If he doesn't have the answer, he's going to put me in the right direction. It's a very low pressure phrase that makes them feel comfortable. And immediately they hear from my mouth, I want to help you first. And it's true. I do. Because I don't want to friggin' tug you along and pull teeth to get your retainer every month. Leave and go somewhere else because there's someone better coming around the corner. So I think that applies in all situations, not just sales or networking. You're selling yourself. And you need to be good at selling yourself and have a little bit of confidence, because if you don't, you need to go back to you and work on you.
Yep.
Right.
It's like that example of sell me this pen. And then some people say, start with the pen. But the real answer is, tell me how you're going to use this pen. How can this pen provide value for you? And even in your sales pitch, if you think about the fundamentals, blocking and tackling of what sales actually means, it's a customer paying money for something to make their life easier.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
And so for you starting off asking a question, which is, tell me information about your problems and how what you think that I offer could make your life easy. You're telling them to give you the value proposition and you put a price tag on it. Why wouldn't you start with that? But everyone gets so focused on, nope, let me talk about this benefit and what version 14.0 is going to do instead of just tell me your problems. I want to help you.
And the same pen analogy, right? And I would reach right for it right when you said that. It would be like, Hayden, yeah, I'm supposed to sell this pen to you, but Hayden, you tell me what you would use this pen for.
Right.
And then you start talking about it. Well, I love drawing and blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. This pen is really, really good quality for drawings. Can you tell me how many drawings you could do to sell to make a bunch of money? Yeah.
Yep.
I could make a ton of drawings with that. Well, I'll tell you, this pen lasts over 10 years. That's how much ink is in here. How many paintings can you do for 10 years? Cool. So the pen is only $99. Cool.
Yep.
Well, you're going to make all that money back in one painting, right?
Yep.
It's easy at that point.
No, I love it. So Cam, we would love your advice for anybody who's listening, who's considering starting their own business, or they're stuck in the middle of this imposter syndrome, or they're just looking to do a side hustle, whatever it is. What advice would you give to somebody who's wanting to start something new, but fear's holding them back?
I would say listen to my podcast. I have a really good podcast that nails this on a very basic level, and it helps people with fear overcome the fear because you start to understand that everyone's going to have it. Stuff I didn't learn in business school is what it's called.
And he literally walks through step by step the things that you can do from the beginning to start your own business. It's so good. We'll link it in the show notes so you can go check it out.
Make sure on didn't you put the apostrophe, because if you don't put it there, it doesn't pull up. But yeah, it's like basic stuff like when and where do I hire? How do I hire? When do I fire? How do I create a partnership? What do I do with contracts? How do I build a website? Like basic stuff that every single person has questions about that we've discussed here today. I have an episode most likely on each one of those. So I would say that's a good starting spot. Or DM me. I'd love to talk to people. I'm totally open to meeting random people all the time and helping you out for free. I won't even charge. I like to help.
Cam, for those listening, what is the best way for folks to message you and get in touch with you?
Instagram's really good because it's like a barrier, I would say, from my personal phone. So Camden, just Kamden on Instagram is really good. Shoot me a message. Maybe comment on a picture so I can see it in the DM, like, hey, I DM'd you or whatever. But yeah, easy. And I've gotten on phone calls with people from all over the world, and I help people from everywhere. And I love it.
Yeah, I've listened to most of your episodes at this point. I'm a big fan of the podcast. Stuff I didn't learn in business school, make sure to add the apostrophe. That podcast is Fraud to Fearless approved. So go listen. And this is really the first collab between our podcasts and likely of many. So looking forward to what the future has in store. Okay. In closing, Brooke, let's start with you. we'll let you go first because oftentimes I end up stealing your takeaways, but let's all share a takeaway and then we can close out. So what was the biggest thing you learned today?
Thanks for not stealing them this time. I'm glad to start. The one thing that keeps repeating in my mind is, oh, you have problems? When you're in the middle of it, right? Oh, you have problems? Good. It's a gift. I don't have to worry about what problems are going to come up if I'm going to understand how to do it. And if somebody else is doing it better than me, it's literally a part of my path. It's a part of my journey. Good. Going to build me.
And you picked it. Yeah, you picked
it.
that journey. Yeah, I love that. That's great. I think the biggest thing for me, after hearing everyone's points of view and what we've discussed, which thank you so much for having me on, guys. I really appreciate the time. And this is so much fun for me to help others. I was helped once upon a time. I still am being helped. But thank you. I would say my takeaway from all this was that I think if anyone is going to make a move to become a fearless person, they need to work on themselves first and build themselves up very, very first before having the strength or the stamina to be able to overcome that fear of any situation. So work on yourself first. Read books, get rid of the ego, try to really just become grounded when making decisions, because I think from there it stems all positive fruit moving forward. And it's a lot easier to handle the bigger $100,000 payrolls when you can overcome smaller stuff and be grounded. So that's my takeaway. Work on yourself.
I love that, Cam. And thank you so much for being on, spending all the time with us. This has been so much fun. I think even seeing and meeting you on this podcast and seeing your brand as a person come to life, my lasting metaphor and big takeaway is really, if you focus on the soil, everything else will take care of itself. If you focus on you, everything else will take care of itself. We went so many different ways. We talked about personal life. We talked about business. Almost in every single topic, you always brought it back to you. And so it was just evident that you've done a lot of investment and self-reflection, and you are solid in who you are and what's important to you. And then everything else is just a direct result of this piece being figured out. And I think that is just so valuable and powerful to be able to say, this is who I am. This is what's important to me. And how I'm going to use that is details. I'll figure that out either by force, or you said like a smack, right? The world will send this to go to wherever and do whatever you need to do. But this, me, focusing on me, my brand, and what's important to me, that's what actually matters.
Well, I appreciate
thanks for
it,
sharing
guys.
that with us.
That was very kind. That was very kind of you. I appreciate it. And I feel the imposter syndrome every single day. So nothing changes there. But I appreciate both you guys for letting me overcome that fear by being on this podcast and pushing me. So thank you. Thank you, guys. I love both of you.
Awesome. Right before we go, in true Fraud to Fearless style, we'd like to end with a Q&A. So Cam, I have two quick questions for you to answer. One is, you say you're ambidextrous. I want to know, which hand do you golf with?
I see, that's one that I really wanted to start going lefty on, but I golf right-handed for now, but it messes up my softball swing. So I've considered switching to lefty golf and right-handed baseball, so that way I could do both in the same season.
That is awesome. And then last question, you've traveled all over the world. What's your favorite country you've ever been to?
Bro, everyone asks this question whenever we're on trips too, and it's so hard. So I have to break it down every time. I break it into two categories. Is this leisure or is this historical? Because if we go on trips, you on both. Okay. I would say the historical side, the coolest place would be Russia. Going to Russia was very cool. And then on the other end, for leisure, I love beaches, like you read in my bio. There's two that are tied for first place, and it would be Bali, Indonesia, or it would be North Shore, Kauai. I mean, I go back to the old roots of the United States. I've been to beaches everywhere, and Kauai is some of the best beaches in the world. Same with Bali. So those are the two phases.
That's awesome. That's
so
awesome.
Cool.
Bucket list items. All right, Brooke, close us out.
All right. We hope that you have enjoyed learning more about entrepreneurship. We'll link all of the things in the show notes. But for now, that's the pod.